So today we're going to be looking back at the body rituals among the Nasarima by Horace Minor, and there's some after reading questions. You'll find evidence to show how Minor used language in body rituals of the Nasarima to make everyday rituals seem foreign, reflect on the impact of our perceptions of others' cultures and the perception others may have on our cultural rituals as Americans, and then you'll develop a central idea or lesson of the text body rituals of the Nasarima. So last week you looked at the body rituals of the Nasarima text, which is in the week 25 modules. It was about 3 to 4 pages of reading from the perspective of Horace Minor, an anthropologist. This week we're going to look at a different perspective. As Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie said in her speech, The Danger of a Single Story, that is how to create a single story, show people as one thing, is only one thing over and over, and that is what they become. So instead of just looking at the Nasarima from Horace Minor's perspective, we're going to look at it from this other gentleman's perspective.
The magical beliefs and practices of the Nakarima people present culture aspects so unusual that it seems necessary to depict them as an example of the extremes to which human behavior can go. We now have succeeded in securing rare footage of the enigmatic Nakarima people in their natural habitat.
The Nakarami are a very poorly understood group, living in the territory between the Canadian Cree, the Yaqui and the Tarahumani of Mexico, and the Carib and the Arawak of the Antilles. According to mythology, their nation was originated by a cultural hero, Naginasa. The Nakarami involve themselves in ritual activity, which focuses on an obsession and hatred of the human body. Sias was a prominent leader of a cult, which destroyed the fertile earth in hopes of producing new life, and in an attempt to reversing their ailing economic conditions.
The Nakarima believed that the mouth had a supernatural influence on all social relationships. Thus, the people sought out holy mouthmen, who used augers, awls, probes, and prods to exorcise evils of the mouth.
Open wide!
Large sections of teeth were even gorged out to allow this application of a supernatural substance. This resulted in unbelievable torture of the client.
You have so many cavities! Why haven't you been flossing? Guys. I'm going to need to perform your ablution.
No!
Vestal maidens performed daily ceremonies upon the ill, involving ablutions. Medicine men jab magically treated needles into their flesh. However, these sensible ceremonies may not cure and will probably kill the neophyte.
I don't want it anymore! I don't want it anymore!
Each Nakarima family has a shrine, where members undergo private and secretive rituals. Men in particular lacerate their faces on a regular basis, which is meant for moral purification.
So if you haven't realized by now, Nakarima spelled backwards is actually American. So if you take a second look at the body ritual among the Nakarima, you will realize it is actually a fictional text, so it's fake, and it was written in order to show how other cultures may perceive our culture, or how we may perceive another culture inaccurately or inappropriately. So Horace Minor used very specific language to kind of trick us into believing that this is a Native American tribe who is very different from us. However, he is actually just describing Americans. So, for example, he says they are a North American group living in the territory between the Canadian Cree, the Yaqui and Tahari of Mexico, and the Carib and Arawak of the Antilles. So he's actually describing the United States. The Nakarima Shrine is described as a place where rites are only discussed with children, and each family has at least one shrine or bathroom. And in the chest are kept many charms and magical potions with which no native believes he could live without. So here they're describing actual medicines. So we're tricked through his language into thinking that this is something mysterious or magical. However, he's really just describing medicines. But from an outsider perspective, this might seem weird that we keep a chest full of medicines. On that page, it also talks about medicine men, which are doctors and holy mouth men. A lot of people on the Jamboard thought the holy mouth men were the most unusual thing. And it says, we're not for the rituals of the mouth. They believe that their teeth would fall out, their gums would bleed, their jaws shrink, their friends desert them, and their lovers reject them. Someone also put that quote as the most unusual ritual or rite of the Nakarima. However, this is exactly what we do as Americans. We think if we don't brush and floss, our gums are going to bleed, our teeth might fall out. If we don't have braces, our jaws could shrink. And if you go on a first date and someone hasn't brushed their teeth, I definitely hope that you would reject them, because that would be smelly and gross. As for the medicine men, those are doctors. It talks about them being housed in Latipso, which I'll talk about in just a minute. But before that, it talks about the masochistic tendencies of the Nakarima. Only men lacerate the surface of their face with a sharp instrument. And women, this part I was very confused about, especially when I found out that this text was actually describing Americans. It says as part of this ceremony, they bake their heads in ovens for about an hour. And that's describing hair dryers that women see at hair salons. And then Latipso, this I just stole from someone else's PowerPoint. They're temples of the medicine men or doctors. The Vestal maidens are nurses. Your body is exposed. They use excreta, are used by the diviner to ascertain the course and nature of a client's sickness. That happens. Sometimes they look at our urine or our poop in order to find out what's wrong with us. They also mention a listener, which is a witch doctor. That's how they describe it. However, they are describing a psychologist. The psychologist would exorcise the devils that lodge in the heads of people who've been bewitched. And finally, a lot of people were surprised by the rites performed by the Nakarima, which are ritual fasts to make fat people thin and ceremonial feasts to make thin people fat. And they're talking there about diets and about perhaps Thanksgiving, a ceremonial feast. And this was a funny one that I picked up on. A few women afflicted with the most inhuman hypermammary development, or big bosoms, are so idolized that they make a handsome living by simply going from village to village and permitting the natives to stare at them for a fee. And if that doesn't describe the Kardashians, I don't know what does. They are the perfect model for that quote. So, again, the Nakarima is a fictional text. It is not true. However, if you read it on the first read, often people are tricked into thinking this is some strange tribe that still lives in America and has these sadistic tendencies to complete these rituals. However, he's actually just describing our rituals of brushing our teeth and flossing our teeth and going to the hospital and taking medicine and going to see psychologists, and our obsession with our looks and our bodies, and that's why we perform all of these different rituals and rites of passage. So it's not an actual Native American tribe. It's us. It's Americans that he's describing. And you're supposed to hopefully kind of look at this and go, oh my goodness, this is how other people could view us. How am I inaccurately viewing other cultures that I don't have a full story of, that I only maybe have a single story of, or have made assumptions on only based on the things that I see in my little bubble. All right, and with that, you are going to go to modules, open up the Nasarima, Nakarima, however you say it, reflection questions, and answer those. Make sure you're using evidence where it asks.